Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba Hashem, Yahweh Shah, Ba Hashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the elders, salutations to you, sincere brothers, teaching and truth and sincerity. A lesson will be entitled An Overview on Jackson, Mississippi. Or will you are edified video was inspired from the YouTube platform Hip Hop Daily for our use. And this video is entitled Murder Town, Mississippi, the most dangerous city in America. Again, for our use, I will speed it up. It's a lot.
Real time. Luigi Man.
In a lot of wild cities in America, the streets are like war zones. But there's only one place that earned the name Murder Town. Jackson, Mississippi is one of the deadliest places in the world. From shootouts at schools to decapitated heads being left on front porches, today we're breaking down why everyone is terrified of Murder Town, Mississippi. Jackson isn't just the capital of Mississippi.
And of course, Jackson was named after who? Andrew Jackson, right? Going into the prophecy. Psalms 49 and 11, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever and their dwelling places to all generations. Their inward thought is talking about the Edomites, beginning with their nobility. They call their lands after their own names, okay? Hence Jackson, okay? Named after Andrew Jackson, who was an Edomite.
It's also the murder capital of America. There are about 5 murders for every 100K people in America, but Jackson is over 20 times more violent. Just stepping outside of your crib in Jackson is a gamble with your life. People are getting...
Wait a minute. What'd he say? Let me slow it down.
Today we're breaking down why everyone is terrified of Murder Town, Mississippi. Jackson isn't just the capital of Mississippi, it's also the murder capital of America. There are about 5 murders for every 100K people in America, but Jackson is over 20 times more violent.
Psalms 23 and verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, referring to America, I will fear no evil while living in America. Because what? We are enlightened via the Holy Spirit. And therefore, Baratazah, we continue to have what? Let's go to Psalm 34 and verse 7. The angel of Yahweh encamps round about them, the elect that fear him, the elect, and delivereth or delivers them, the elect. So let's go back. For you art or are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. How so? Via the scriptures, right? So with that being said, let's go to Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter, and verse 11 in the NLT. The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. Their collected sayings are like a nail-studded stick with which a shepherd drives the sheep. So this truth is likened to what? Back into Ecclesiastes 12 and 11, this time in the KJV. The words of the wise are as golds or goats, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. So if you know anything about a nail does what? It stabilizes something. And that's what this truth does. The truth stabilizes us in the spirit, and this is manifested in our physical lives. Okay, when you look at this term, a goad or goets, okay, this is like a driving instrument that's used to guide the sheep. And that's what the word does. Okay, so not only does it stabilizes us, but it drives us into the avenue of righteousness. All right.
Island. Just stepping outside of your crib in Jackson is a gamble with your life. People are getting robbed and shot almost every day, and nobody knows what to do about it. If you're not from Jackson, it's better to stay far away. And even reporters need to stay strapped up in there in Murder Town.
You good though, man.
No.
But before we get into all the wild violence, you gotta understand where it started. Jackson has always been a rough place, and it's been going downhill fast since the 80s. Back then, there were over 200,000 people in the city, and there were a lot of businesses and opportunities. Then white people started leaving the city, and Jackson didn't do anything to help the black people who were stuck there. The problem actually started in 1970, when the schools in Jackson were forced to let black kids into the same schools where the white kids went. Racist white people didn't want their kids in the same.
Remember this, no matter where we at, especially in America, right? It says Ruth 1 and 20, and she said unto them, Ruth, okay, no, Salakia, I'm tripping, Salakia, Naomi, Ruth 1 and 20, and she said unto them, who said this, Naomi, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, okay, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me, okay, and America, when modified, comes from the origin of this word, Mara, which means bitter. So we were brought to America / the Americas because Yahweh, Ba Hashem, Yahushua was going to deal very bitter with us. Okay? Look at all the atrocities we have been through.
Same schools, so they started leaving Jackson. Now, Jackson is over 80% black, and racism is still a huge issue. The city doesn't get enough money from the state because the people who live there are black, and they haven't even had safe drinking water for years. In Jackson, you gotta boil your water before you drink it, and when you take a shower,
Ezekiel chapter 4 and verse 13. And Yahweh said, even thus shall the sons of Israel eat their bread. It's like eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them. Okay, so from our food source and our water source, it's all corrupted, it's all defiled, it's all poisonous. Okay, so it's via the Holy Spirit, the grace of the Most High, through his son Yahushua, we are still living at this time frame.
the water that comes out of the pipes is brown. Racists are also still killing black people in Jackson, and in 2011, Murder Town made headlines everywhere when a bunch of white teenagers murdered an innocent black dude for no reason. James Craig Anderson was a 47-year-old black man who was born in Holmes County, Mississippi. He moved to Jackson and got involved with the community, but going to Jackson turned out to be a horrible mistake. In 2011, a white teenager named Daryl Deadman got a bunch of friends together and made a plan to go into Jackson to attack black people. The crew had been drinking and keeping the bottles to throw at people, and Daryl told his homies, let's go fuck with some niggas. Daryl and his friends spotted James Craig Anderson in the parking lot of a motel while they were driving down the road. James had lost his car keys and was trying to get into his whip, and that's when the white teenagers pulled up and started attacking him. One of the teenagers threw up a fist and yelled white power, and then they all got back in their whips to leave. They had a Jeep in the truck, and the Jeep left first. Daryl Deadman was driving the truck, and instead of pulling out of the parking lot, he drove over James Craig Anderson on purpose and killed him. Daryl Deadman started bragging about killing James Craig Anderson, and 2 weeks later, he was booked on a murder charge. Daryl Deadman and his friends all went down, but then the FBI got involved, and the situation got even crazier. The FBI started investigating hate crimes against black people in Jackson, and they found out how bad it really was. In just a few months between 2011 and 2012, a black dude was attacked for walking by a golf course and was beaten so badly that he started begging for his life. Another black dude almost got run over by a bunch of white people, but he was able to jump out of the way. And there were a bunch of white people who had been driving around trying to hit black people with glass bottles. But that's not even the most brutal part of the story. And what happened next was like something out of a horror movie. Daryl Dedman got hit with 2 life sentences for killing James Craig Anderson, but at the same time, his cousin Christian Dedman was working as a narcotics investigator just south of Jackson in Rankin County. Christian Dedman and 5 other cops were part of a crew that called themselves the Goon Squad, and they were involved with one of the craziest cases in Mississippi. Dedman had already killed an allegedly innocent dude in 2019, and in 2021, 2 other members of the Goon Squad killed another guy and got away with it. Then in 2023, Christian Dedman and the rest of the Goon Squad broke into a house and kidnapped 2 dudes named Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker. The Goon Squad beat the dudes and tased them. Then one of the cops found the dildo and shoved it into Eddie Parker's mouth. Christian Dedman told the dudes that he was gonna rape him, and the only reason he stopped is because Michael Jenkins shit himself. Then the Goon Squad started hitting Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker with a piece of wood and a sword. Christian Dedman started shooting into the backyard, and one of the other cops stuck a gun in Michael Jenkins' mouth and let off a shot. Before the Goon Squad left the crib, they planted a gun and meth inside. They tried to say that Michael Jenkins was shooting at them, but eventually the truth came out, and all 6 cops were booked for torture and hate crimes. The Goon Squad was making headlines, but that same year, something even crazier went down in Jackson. A woman named Betterson Wade called the Jackson police and reported her son missing in March 2023. Betterson Wade didn't even want to call the cops at first because they had already killed her brother a few years earlier, but she freaked out when her 37-year-old son went missing and didn't know what to do. The cops told Betterson that they didn't know anything, and she spent the next 7 months looking for her son. But what she didn't know is that her son had already been killed by the police and was buried behind a jail. Betterson's son had been run over by a police car and killed. Then they buried him behind the jail without telling her. The cops had buried over 200 people behind the jail, and nobody knows how many of them had been killed by the police. According to the Jackson government, the bodies were all from people who didn't have families, but that was cap. Betterson Wade's son had identification on him when he died, but the cops never tried to get in touch with Betterson Wade because she was already suing him for killing her brother. Murdertown probably has the worst cops in Mississippi, but the whole state is known for having dirty police. And all the way back in 1965, a dude named Phil Ox wrote the track "Here's to the State of Mississippi" and said, "And here's to the cops of Mississippi. They're chewing their tobacco as they lock the prison door, and their bellies bounce inside them when they knock you to the floor. No, they don't like taking prisoners in their private little wars. And behind their broken badges, there are murderers and more." And in 2023, the police murdered another dude named Keith Muriel. Keith Muriel was hanging out in the parking lot of a hotel when a security guard called the cops on him. A cop showed up and told him to leave. But then a little while later, Keith Muriel went back to the parking lot and 3 cops attacked him for no reason. The cops threw Keith Muriel on the ground and tased him over 20 times while he was screaming and begging for him to stop. A lot of people don't know how deadly tasers can be, especially when you're over 40 years old like Keith Muriel was. After they finished torturing Keith Muriel with tasers, the cops threw him in the back of a police car and didn't even check to make sure he was still breathing. And by the time paramedics finally showed up to check on him, Keith Muriel was already dead. The cops aren't the only ones killing people though. The streets of Murdertown are deadly, and the goons there will take your own gun and shoot you with it. Gangs are all over the city too. Jackson has Gangster Disciples, Latin Kings, Black P-Stones, and one of the biggest sets of vice stores in America. There's another crew in Jackson called the Simon City Royals, and they were causing so much violence in the city that the cops had hit them with a RICO case. The Simon City Royals were kidnapping people and torturing them, shooting their ops, and moving weight all over Mississippi. 37 Simon City Royals got locked up, but they've been killing people in prison too. Back in 2018, one of the top dudes in the Simon City Royals told Dylan Hefker and Robert Williams to kill a dude they were locked up with. Dylan Hefker and Robert Williams made a couple of knives, and when they spotted the dude, they stabbed him to death, and the only thing they got back was a couple $100 in their commissary account. The Simon City Royals are the most brutal gang in Jackson, and they've even tortured their own people. In 2015, a Simon City Royal affiliate did something to piss off an OG, so other members of the crew kidnapped him and took him to a hotel room. That's when they tied the dude up, tortured him for hours, and then burned off his tattoo. The gangs in Jackson are sliding on each other, but innocent people are always caught up in the beef too. Back in January 2024, 2 shooters were chasing each other down the street and letting off shots. The shooters didn't hit each other, but an innocent dude was tragically caught in the middle and killed. The violence in Jackson is crazy, and there's a lot of dudes in the streets who are trying to make it out of the trenches by rapping. Jackson has strong ties to the rap game because of dudes from the city like David Banner. David Banner started out rapping in the 90s, but he really blew up from producing. He made beats for T.I. and worked with other big artists like Lil Boosie, Lil Wayne, and Snoop Dogg. Afro Man also came up in Jackson, and he proved out wild dudes from Murdertown Nar when he punched a fan on stage back in 2015. Rappers from Murdertown have love for the city, but they know how dangerous it can get. Mississippi Rel is a rapper from Jackson, and he said you can't be scared if you pull up to Jackson because the dudes there will smell the fear on you.
You can't be scared when you come down here too, they gonna smell that fear.
There are a lot of underground rappers in the city, but the dude who was putting on for Jackson the most was a rapper named Lil Lonnie. Lil Lonnie was putting Jackson on the map in the mainstream and was about to really pop off. But then, he became another victim in Murdertown. Lil Lonnie was from the north side of Jackson, and he said that when you're born there, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're gonna be a hustler or a robber.
In my hood, I'ma say it like this, it ain't nothing to do but shit. You either gonna be a hustler, you either gonna be a robber, and that's it.
All of Lil Lonnie's homies were hopping off the porch when they were around 12 years old, but Lil Lonnie stayed out of the street drama and was focused on rapping and finishing school. Lil Lonnie finished high school and went to college, and that's when he started popping off in the rap game. Back in 2015, his track Colors went viral and ran up crazy numbers, but Lil Lonnie decided to stay in college instead of dropping out and going full-time with rap. Even though Lil Lonnie was still in school, he was working with huge artists like Bryson Tiller and Moneybagg Yo. Lil Boosie linked up with Lil Lonnie for the track Walking on Blood and wanted to sign Lonnie to his label, but Lil Lonnie turned him down and kept making his own lane. Lil Lonnie wanted everyone around him to make it out, and in the video for his track Make a Way, Lonnie talks about how hard it is to get out of Murdertown. Lil Lonnie was on his way up, but then in 2018, he was brutally killed while driving around Jackson. Lil Lonnie was driving around with a woman named Ashanti Jones, and they were headed to a friend's crib to kick it. According to people close to Lonnie, he didn't have any enemies in the city, but a whip pulled up behind him and started shooting. Lil Lonnie pushed Ashanti down so she wouldn't get hit and saved her life, but one of the bullets hit Lil Lonnie in the head and tragically left him dead at the scene. The whole city was shocked when Lonnie died because he had a lot of love in Jackson, but what happened next was even worse. A couple days after Lil Lonnie was killed, his friends and family had a candlelight vigil for him in his neighborhood. People from all over Jackson showed up to pay respects, but then a shooter rolled through and started busting into the crowd.
Yo, he had beef. He had beef. It has to be deeper than that, right? Because why would they spin again? Doesn't make sense, okay?
Luckily, nobody got hit, but the situation made it clear that nobody was safe in Jackson. Some people thought Lil Lonnie had a target on his back just because he was popular and assumed somebody killed him out of jealousy. But what makes the case even worse is that the shooters didn't even know, and Lil Lonnie was brutally killed because of the headlights on his whip. Monia Davis, Marshawn...
Right, but at the same time frame, if this was an isolated incident, why in the world did they shoot up, okay, the gathering with his friends and family? That doesn't make sense. It's deeper than that.
Carr and Antoine Carr all ended up getting booked for the murder. The three of them were driving down Montebello Street in Jackson with...
Because if it was just about the lights being bright, okay, he's dead. What's the point of shooting up the family gathering?
Davis's girlfriend, Sonata Lewis. According to Sonata Lewis, Monia Davis was mad because the headlights of the whip behind them were too bright, so he pulled over and hopped out with a gun. Antoine and Marshawn got out with guns too, and all three of them started shooting. They had no idea who was in the whip they were shooting at, and they murdered Lil Lonnie just because his headlights were too bright. Lil Lonnie's death was shocking, but this next murder was so brutal, it doesn't even sound real. June 10th, 2017 seemed like a normal summer day in Jackson. The weather was bright and sunny, and kids were running around on summer break. But at 9 a.m., the cops got a crazy call and rode up to a house on the 1500 block of Deer Park Street. The first cop who pulled up to the scene had no idea what he was about to find. On the front porch of the house was a human head, and it belonged to the cop's cousin, Jeremy Jackson. The news about the decapitated head spread like crazy all over the city, and somebody started sending photos of it around. Jeremy Jackson's brother, Corey Jackson, was at work, and he got a call from their other brother. The other brother sent Corey the photo of Jeremy's head, and that's how Corey found out about the murder. Then a few hours after Jeremy's head was found on the porch, some kids were playing in the woods around a mile from the scene, and that's where they found Jeremy's body. The cops rushed over and discovered that Jeremy had been shot in the leg, and his body had been set on fire. The gunshot and fire isn't what killed him though, and according to the coroner, Jeremy was still alive when his head was cut off. Nobody has any idea what happened to Jeremy Jackson or why somebody would want him dead. He had 3 kids and was studying business management at Jackson State University, and there's no clues about why he was killed like that. Rumors started flying that there's a serial killer in Murder Town, and that's who killed Jeremy Jackson, but there's no evidence to back the story up. Getting your head cut off probably won't happen if you pass through Jackson, but you definitely gotta be careful if you stop for gas. Gas stations are some of the deadliest places to be in Murder Town, and there are so many murders at gas stations that the cops started an operation called Gas Up and Guns Down to stop the violence. People are still dying like crazy in Jackson gas stations though. Back in April 2024, a dude walked into the gas station and started hitting a woman in the head. Then he walked outside and started putting hands on a dude who was sitting in his whip. The other guy was strapped up though, and the situation turned into a shootout. Bullets were flying all over the place, and the dude who was putting hands on everyone ended up getting killed. Then later that same day, 3 other people in Jackson all got shot and killed in separate shootings. In that same week, an 80-year-old woman was shot and killed while she was sleeping on her couch. Hotels are also dangerous spots to be. In February 2025, Precious Wilson was shot and killed at the Studio 6 Hotel. And a few weeks before that, Yesenia Cruz was beaten to death at the OYO Townhouse in Jackson. And a few months before Yesenia Cruz was beaten to death, a woman named Susanna Resendiz was shot and killed at the same hotel. There are so many murders going down in Jackson that it's hard to keep track though, and nowhere is safe. In February 2025, a 68-year-old woman named Thelma Wright was shot and killed inside her own home by a 15-year-old. Teenagers are doing a lot of the shooting in Murder Town, and in the same week that Thelma Wright was killed, a different 15-year-old was shot in the head in South Jackson. A lot of kids in Jackson end up in the streets when they're 11 or 12 years old, and by the time they're teenagers, they're already pulling triggers and killing people. The teenagers in Jackson are also known for jacking people's whips, and they're always ready to shoot to get what they want. Cities like Chicago have a lot of gang violence, but what makes Jackson so deadly is that you never know who's gonna try and take you out. Back in 2021, the mayor of Jackson talked to CNN and said, "We see lifelong friends kill each other. We've seen a son kill his mother and sister." In March 2025, a woman shot her own husband over a friend request on social media. Rashawn Wallace got into a fight with her husband, Damian Reed, because Damian was mad about a friend request that Rashawn had made. It's not clear exactly how it went down, but Rashawn let off a warning shot to make Damian get away from her. And when that didn't work, Rashawn shot Damian and killed him. Rashawn actually performed CPR on Damian after she shot him and tried to keep him alive. But Damian died, and now Rashawn is facing a murder charge.
Mississippi needs more skilled workers. High-paying jobs are in demand.
Another reason there's so much violence in Murder Town is because there's nothing to do in the city. Some people try to open up clubs, but then in 2021, there was a brutal triple murder at Club Rain on the west side of the city. A dude named Jeremy Johnson was booked after he allegedly killed 3 people at the club, but then the cops let him go without charging him. People in Jackson were protesting the case for years, and in 2025, the cops finally decided that they wanted to officially charge Jeremy Johnson, but they couldn't find him anymore. You're always taking a risk if you go outside in Murder Town. And in August 2024, 6 people all got shot outside of a bar in downtown Jackson. One of the people who got hit up tragically didn't make it out alive, and the cops still have no idea what really went down. Being a cop in Murder Town is dangerous too though, and in 2013, a detective got killed inside the police station. The cops had booked a dude named Jeremy Powell for allegedly stabbing a guy named Christopher Alexander in the neck and killing him. Detective Eric Smith and another cop were interviewing Jeremy Powell inside the police station, but Jeremy Powell wasn't ready for jail. When the cops were wrapping up the interview, Jeremy Powell attacked Detective Eric Smith and grabbed his gun. The other cop shot at Jeremy Powell and missed. Then her gun jammed and she ran outside to call for backup. But before anyone else could make it to the room, Jeremy Powell shot Detective Eric Smith 4 times and killed him. At that point, Jeremy Powell knew he was going to end up in prison, so instead, he pointed the gun at his own head and let off a shot. The first shot went into the side of his head, but Jeremy was still alive, so he put the gun under his chin and let off another shot that killed him. Some people in Murdertown go to college to make it out of the streets. Jackson has a college in the city called Jackson State University, but people are getting shot at college parties too. A fraternity at Jackson State University was throwing a block party for homecoming weekend, but then a fight broke out and somebody started shooting. Everyone knows that the violence in Murdertown is crazy. It's been the murder capital of America for 4 years straight, but nobody knows how to fix the problem. The city brought in the Mississippi Capitol Police to help out, but then those cops just started shooting people. People in Jackson already have plenty of reasons to not trust the police, and the Capitol Police are even sketchier. The Capitol Police don't even wear body cameras, and in 2024, they shot a bunch of people who were allegedly all innocent. The Capitol Police killed a 25-year-old dude over a traffic stop, and in another situation, they started shooting at a suspect and hit a random woman who was just sitting inside her house. The government in Jackson wanted to bring in even more Capitol Police, but cops are causing all kinds of violence. Back in 2022, a woman named Sharita Harris was riding around with her friend in Jackson.
All right, so this was just more so just showing how the crime rate is in Jackson. Again, Ruth 1:20, and she said, "Unto them, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with us." And this was the whole purpose of us coming to America. And towards the end, right, the Most High was going to release that Holy Spirit, okay, and gather his elect, starting with the 144,000, who has received the tender mercies of David. And ultimately, that's going into the precious blood of Yahweh Shah, right? So, with that being said, last precept. This is Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25. "And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High." He in the form of America. And wear out actually in the Hebrew is defined as constantly / ongoing harassing from a spiritual / physical sense, okay? "And think to change times and laws, which he has done," right? "And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time." So what is a time? 100 years. What is times? 200. So what's 200 plus 100? Is 300. And the dividing of time. So what is half of 100 is 50. So you put all of this together, 350 years, right? So our end of punishment is coming abruptly to an end. Lord will, this was an edifying lesson. Shalom.